Hey guys, and welcome back to Fireside Farms. If you're new here, my name is Megan, and today we've got some more spring planting to do in the garden. I've got several pepper plants that need to go in one of my 8x4 beds. And if you can see, I got the shade cloth up, finally. Yay, it feels so nice to be under here in the shade when it's 80 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning. But instead of you guys just watching me stick some plants in the ground, I decided I was going to talk to you today about something that is the bane of my existence in this garden, and that is Bermuda grass. Now, I live in the desert southwest in New Mexico, and Bermuda grass is one of the few turf grasses that actually grows pretty well in our area. It does really well in sandy, loose draining soils, and it loves the sun and the heat. It's not very shade tolerant. So you'll find Bermuda grass everywhere around here, including on my property, which I have actually been trying to get to grow since I moved here in 2020, and I'm having a bit of a difficult time, but that's a whole nother issue with the quality of soil that I have here on this property and other factors. But unfortunately, one of the great places that it loves to grow is here in the garden because it receives a good amount of water from me watering my garden beds. So while I cannot get Bermuda grass to thrive on the rest of my property, it is absolutely loving it here in this garden. And I have been tirelessly working to keep it under control for the past couple years. Unfortunately, I cannot completely eradicate this Bermuda grass in the garden, nor would I want to, because that would require a heavy dose of herbicides for a long period of time, and I'm an organic gardener. So I wanted to explain to you today what I've used for the past 4-ish years to just keep the Bermuda grass under control in an effective way, and also just to let you guys know, like, if you are an organic gardener and you're struggling with Bermuda grass, it's probably going to be possible that you can never completely get rid of it, and that's okay. But if you do small things every season or every time you come out to your garden, it is absolutely manageable. And we're gonna get into those things right now. So the first way I control Bermuda grass is to utilize cardboard mulching. And that can be either in an in-ground bed or in a raised bed, like I have right here. I utilize cardboard in my raised beds when the Bermuda grass gets a little crazy and I don't want to deal with pulling it up all the time. So as you can see here, I put just a bottom layer of cardboard across the top of the soil and then the mulch over. But unfortunately, that also requires that I have to cut out a hole when I want to put plants into my bed. So with the first option being a cardboard mulch, this is going to help stop your Bermuda grass in one very specific way, and that's going to be preventing it from photosynthesizing. So that thick layer of cardboard is light impenetrable, and it will stop the grass from receiving light, which it really, really needs to live and reproduce. And this cardboard mulch, the way I apply it is either, or both ways. It can either be applied at the bottom of a bed. So when I make my raised beds, I put that cardboard right at the very, very bottom before I even put my soil in. That way any weeds or grass on the bottom of that bed has to go through a very long process of waiting for that cardboard to break down before it can ever come up through the soil. And then secondly, what you guys see me doing on this bed is I laid down cardboard on top of the existing bed soil because I had Bermuda grass coming up the sides. Now, I do no-till for the most part in all of my raised beds and in my in-ground bed. That means that I just add compost or soil and amendments on top of the existing soil every year. I never do any tilling. I try to do as little digging as possible when I transplant plants because I want the structure of the soil and the microbiome inside of the soil to remain constant and alive, which is why I don't till. Unfortunately, that also means that when I have Bermuda grass coming up the sides of my bed, I can't get down in there a foot and start ripping up Bermuda grass because I'll just be tilling up the soil. Now, cons for using cardboard mulching is that eventually it breaks down. That means you have depending on where you live and how much rain you get, your cardboard mulch barrier could last a couple months, or it could last up to a year. Mine often lasts up to a year because we get very little rain. But inside the garden beds, it lasts for a lot less time because I'm watering constantly every day. So when you do use cardboard mulching to stop your Bermuda grass, just be aware it's going to break down over time and you will have to reapply it. Now, you do not have to use cardboard. By all means, you can use the plastic weed barrier you find at the store if that's going to be effective for you, if you don't care. I do. I prefer to not put plastics in the ground. I prefer to do this as organically and naturally as possible. And also cardboard's free because I receive a lot of packages from Amazon. But weed barrier is just as effective. It's just as great. Although one comment I have about weed barrier is I have never had any weed barrier I've ever used, no matter how expensive it was, last more than a year in the beating sun of this desert. And then when it breaks down, it just leaves all these little plastic stringy pieces all in the dirt. It makes me so upset. I mean, if my cardboard's gonna break down or my plastic weed barriers break down, at least the cardboard adds some nutrients to the soil. But that's just my 2 cents. So in conclusion, cardboard mulch can be really effective and it breaks down over time. And a lot of times you can find cardboard for free if you don't receive packages. I'm sure people have extra moving boxes laying around. But the cons are that it breaks down over time and it has to be reapplied. As well as you have to do this. If you put them on top of your soil, you're going to have to dig out the cardboard or put holes in it either to sow seeds or to put these transplants in. It is an added step in the process and it's kind of annoying, but it's what I've got to work with, and as long as I keep at it and keep pulling weeds every now and then and keep mulching every season, you know, I have it for the most part under control. A second thing that can help in dealing with Bermuda grass is utilizing shade. Now, a shade cloth is a must for my desert garden, which is why it's so large and I invested so much time and energy into getting it here. But one added benefit that it provides for me in the summertime is it actually thins out the Bermuda grass just a hair, enough to make it tolerable enough to pick stray strands of Bermuda grass whenever I come out here. So Bermuda grass is a sun-loving grass. They do make strains of Bermuda grass that you can seed your lawn with that are more shade tolerant, which have mixed reviews online on whether that's actually true. Nonetheless, I didn't seed my lawn with Bermuda grass, so I'm assuming this is just natural, and it does not love the shade. It likes 100% sun all day long, and once I put this shade cloth up every year, all of the grass that is exposed to the shade cloth for most of the day really slows down in growth. The stolons on top become longer, searching for more light, searching for places that have more light, and they can't find it. So it just makes it easier to weed my garden after I've put my shade cloth up for the spring and summer. The next thing you can do to control your Bermuda grass is to solarize the ground where the grass is coming up. Solarization is just the process of making the ground really hot, utilizing the sun to do it, usually with like a plastic tarp, either clear or black, although I prefer black because along with the heat that you're creating, you're also blocking out the sunlight from the plants. So you'll often see solarization on like large plots of land where farmers are leaving that land fallow, which is basically unused for a season, and they'll cover it with this big plastic black tarp and lash down all the sides, and it'll be completely covered like that for about 6 months. And that is solarization. That process is going to make the ground underneath the tarp really, really hot, so that at first a lot of weed seeds will germinate, but then it'll be way too hot for them to live and they'll die. Now if you add a black instead of clear tarp, then you'll block out the sun and they won't have anything to live with anyways. So I do utilize solarization on my property. I have for the past year. I had a pretty bad Bermuda grass explosion on the new in-ground garden bed that I had last year. So it required me to cover the entire half of my in-ground garden bed with black tarp into the fall, in the hopes that all that Bermuda grass would die. Unfortunately, I did not have it on long enough for the hottest part of the year, and I ended up keeping it on over the winter, as you guys can see. And it is so completely overrun with Bermuda grass that I am leaving it on for one more season to really kill everything that's under there. And let me show you how thick this grass is. This grass is so thick, just completely covered in Bermuda grass under this entire tarp. Conveniently, this half, almost about where the shade cloth runs to, did not get so overwhelmed with Bermuda grass last year that I couldn't control it. As you can see, I've re-amended these beds. They're all planted. I do have some Bermuda grass coming up, but the fact that I just put up the shade cloth is going to inhibit the growth of these little clumps a lot. And then once these squashes and watermelons and such start taking over, they're going to completely block out the sun for the ground dwelling Bermuda anyways. So this area should be relatively Bermuda free for the duration of the summer. And hopefully by the end of the year, I can take this tarp off, re-amend the rows, and fingers crossed, the Bermuda grass will be, for the most part, out of those beds. Now, I don't presume to think that I will ever get 100% of this Bermuda grass out of here. I know I won't, especially without the use of herbicides. Bermuda grass spreads 3 different ways. So the first is by seed, the second is by above ground runners called stolons, and the third is going to be underground rhizomes, so long roots that spread underground and a new blade of grass will pop up somewhere else. This makes it incredibly difficult to get rid of because if it's not shooting out seeds in the wind, then it's sending runners across the top of the ground, or even worse, a foot deep underneath the ground where you can't reach it. So I will never eradicate my property completely of Bermuda grass, but all of these tactics tied together in an intelligent and thoughtful way over the course of a gardening season can really help so that they're not affecting your annual crops. My main issue with Bermuda grass is that if I just let it run rampant, it will choke the life out of my peppers and my tomatoes and my squashes. But if we can live in harmony with each other, then I'll be happy with that. So I say all of this knowing that even if all of the Bermuda grass dies underneath this tarp, I still have Bermuda grass over here and on this edge and here that will 100% spread its roots back, and I will have Bermuda grass back in here eventually. Not to mention all these little grasses that are probably sending runners under here as we speak. Unfortunately, on a Bermuda grass lawn that was previously really established, it's just not going to happen. Complete eradication is not going to happen. But if you can manage it, then you can coexist peacefully with your Bermuda grass. So the fourth way that I really cut down on having to deal with Bermuda grass is completely mulching my entire garden with wood chips. Ta-da! So I get free wood chips here. I know probably if y'all watch a lot of homesteading YouTube channels, you've heard of chip drop. They don't have that here. In fact, I haven't found a lot of channels that say they were successful with chip drop. What I was successful with was calling several local arborists or tree cutting companies and just saying, hey guys, do you drop wood chips off at residences for free? Some didn't, but some do, because if they've got to take a load to the dump every time they chop down a tree, it's going to cost them money. But I live actually pretty close to the city dump in a roundabout way. I live close enough near to city limits that they were comfortable dropping it off. It wouldn't cost them extra money to drive to my house. It would save them money at the dump. So it worked out. They do that locally around here. They did let me know though, if I had lived too far out of town, it would have cost them more to bring it to my house than to just dump it at the city dump. So that is something to consider. But definitely call your local arborists. I get all of these wood chips for free. They dump them on my property wherever I want it. And that is how I have completely mulched the entirety of this garden for 3 years in a row. Obviously, it is not effective in all places. There are still spots where I'll have grass coming up, but for the most part, it's greatly lessened. And if this mulch was not here, I would just have Bermuda grass everywhere, crawling all up through the beds. And I don't think I'd have a garden, honestly. Because Bermuda grass does spread so readily through stolons and rhizomes, it really helps if you mulch or cover the area around where the problem Bermuda grass is as well, because it wants to send out runners and find as much sunlight and water as it can. So if you have Bermuda grass that's relegated to an area, try to keep it from spreading elsewhere as well, because as it spreads, it gets stronger, it becomes a stronger plant. You gotta chop it off at its legs and keep it there. In these in-ground beds, every season, that means spring and fall, I come through here and I add an extra layer of wood chips, sometimes a layer of cardboard if I have enough, but I'll add an extra layer of wood chips on top of this existing row, just to make it hard for the grass to come up. As hard as possible without getting a tiller out here and tearing up old Bermuda grass. And although I do run a basic no-till operation here, I'm not going to tell you not to till up Bermuda grass if you have the time and the energy and the equipment to do it. I will give you a caveat though, be careful when you are tilling up Bermuda grass that you get, if you're hoping to eradicate it by doing this, that you try and get as much of those roots out as possible once you till, because the underground rhizomes of the Bermuda plant, if it's chopped up into little pieces and left in the ground, all of those little pieces will become new Bermuda grass plants. It's a noxious weed, honestly, but so be very, very careful if you are tilling up an area with Bermuda grass, because you might accidentally create more plants. So scary. That's why it's just really, really easy to smother however you can. Block that Bermuda grass from receiving light and all of the things that it needs for life, and just smother it for a long time. All right, the last tip I have for dealing with Bermuda grass, and no one's gonna like this idea. I enjoy it, it makes me really happy. But constant weeding. Come out here, you should be visiting your garden every day anyways. Visit your garden. But every day that I come out here, I will just randomly, for 5 minutes, all it takes is 5 minutes a day, pick a spot where there's some Bermuda grass and get to work. Start pulling it up. If you can, get down into the dirt and get those rhizomes and pull them completely out. And all you have to do is a little bit a day. It's just a little bit of progress every day, and that could be the key between it completely overtaking you or you guys living peaceably alongside each other. I don't even know I'm doing it half the time. I'll come out here just to cruise the garden, check on it in the mornings, and I'll see a stray gnarly patch of Bermuda grass and I'll just get down and start ripping it up. And it's really therapeutic. It is super therapeutic to start just ripping grass out by its roots and trying to get as much as possible. I really enjoy it. But it's a really helpful tip to get yourself to just do a little bit of work every day instead of waiting weeks for all of this Bermuda grass to build up and then having to sit down for like 5 hours one day in the hot sun and try and get it all out at once. Just do a little bit at a time. Make it easier on yourself. And go visit your garden. Now, pulling up the grass angrily a lot has its risks if you don't get the roots out. Like I said before, if you start breaking up these rhizomes into small pieces, you're just gonna make more plants. But it makes me happy. It releases some pent-up anger I have. And although I can't prove this scientifically, I figure you can absolutely overgraze a Bermuda field. If you're using Bermuda lawn, like for your pasture or something, you can absolutely overgraze that stuff to where the Bermuda starts dying back. You need to take care of it better. You need to get the animals off of it. So I consider myself a grazer. And I come out here every day to my garden And I overgrazed the crap out of my Bermuda grass. And maybe if I knock it back enough, it'll give up. But it's been pretty effective for me so far, especially in the raised garden beds. Really maintaining this raised bed garden area has been easier with the shade cloth and the mulch. The in-ground garden bed is a bit tougher, but we are doing the solarizing this year, and we will see how it turns out. But that is all I have for you guys today. I needed to get out here and put some more peppers in the ground. I'm not done yet. I still have garlic, and onions to harvest. I'm really wanting this garlic to be ready, but it's not quite done yet. So I'm gonna have a lot of planting space left over, and I think I might have one more tomato bed. I'm excited for that, but it's gonna be a while. These onions are nowhere near ready to come out yet, and I'm still working on the garlic. So for now, we are re-sowing some California Black Eye No. 5 beans. I had some spotty germination on those, mostly because of roly-polies. And putting some more peppers in an extra spare plant bed that I've got. So, how exciting! The garden is almost completely in, and I am stoked to start getting some harvest this year. But thank you guys for joining me today, and I will catch you on the next one.